Today we are going to look at 3 accessories that I've been using with the SL-1200 family of turntables from Technics. Mind you, one of them could be used with any turntable and another with some but not all turntables. And I'll tell you from the outset right now, 2 of these turntable accessories meet or exceed my expectations, but one does not.
This episode is brought to you by Munich High-End, the world's leading international audio show, running May 15 through 18 at the MOC.
So our first accessory today is the Uberlight frame from the Reliable Corporation in Canada, although some people say Canada. And we might see this as a higher end version of the Uberlight Flex. Now, I've had an Uberlight frame in Berlin and in Lisbon since mid-February. So what is it? Well, the frame is essentially a premium turntable light that helps with inspecting and cueing vinyl records. So I think the frame lends a pleasing visual focus to a turntable even during daylight hours. And it can be extremely useful when inspecting a record surface for dust or damage. And that's even on its lowest setting. I'll get to that in a moment. Now, inside the box, we get the right-angled cast, I think it's aluminium or aluminum Uberlight frame. Yeah, Canadians get aluminum, so do the Americans, but if you're in Europe and the UK, you get an aluminium version. And we also get a choice of 3 mounting plates. So there's a freestanding weight and there's a desk mount with screws. However, my preferred mount is the screw-on clamp, and the Uberlight frame then drops onto its open spindle for 360 degrees of rotation. And that rotation is really helpful when lifting the turntable lid on a Technics SL-1210 or 1200 or 1300. Now the frame is powered via a 5-volt USB-C adapter, and that illuminates 18 LEDs mounted to the underside of a plastic housing which sits inside the aluminium frame. And that housing tilts 30 degrees forwards or backwards. And the 18 LEDs are subdivided into 6 zones to be optionally turned on and off in groups of 3 using the touch sensitive top plate on the top side of that plastic housing. And we can also touch cycle through 3 color temperatures and 6 intensity levels for a maximum, I think, of 500 lumens. Now I have mine permanently set to minimum intensity and it still clearly shows the dust on the record surface. I don't need to get any more light to see exactly what's going on with the record. However, the supplied infrared remote control allows us to change the frame's intensity and its color temperature from the listening position. Mind you, I have found that that remote is a little bit fussy about firing angle. It's not always as 100% reliable as I would like, but on the upside it features a small torch and it can be magnetically clipped to the underside of the frame when not in use. I think that's a really nice touch. And you don't get any of this functionality with a €30 IKEA light, and that IKEA light won't look as good as the frame. Yes, it will get the job done, as many of you will no doubt tell me in the comments, but this is probably why the frame sells for a not insubstantial €499. Okay, so I have to be really careful when talking about this next turntable accessory. And before I even tell you what it is, I will say publicly that I do not condone substance abuse. And this accessory comes from Berlin from a company called H.A.N.D Hi-Fi, which I think is an offshoot of the Kreuzberg record store Sound Metaphors. And if you check out H.A.N.D Hi-Fi's Instagram account, you will see that they build bespoke loudspeaker systems for clubs and smaller listening spaces. So far, so safe, right? However, H.A.N.D Hi-Fi's latest product is a turntable weight that first went on sale towards the end of 2024. It looks like this. Now, many vinyl enthusiasts use a record weight to help flatten a warped record or to stabilize the record's position on the platter for better stylus tracking. And other times they use a record weight to reduce the negative impact of airborne vibrations. And the net result in many but not all cases is a better focused stereo image and more emphatic microdynamics. That's where the smaller details seem to pop out more. And I emphasize not all because not all turntables are designed to withstand the extra weight of a stabilizing puck. Weights can stress the motor, they can strain the bearing, and they can cause rotational speed inaccuracies. So I would advise you to check in with your turntable manufacturer before dropping a weight onto its center spindle. Now, I have bought two of these H.A.N.D Hi-Fi weights, one in pink, one in blue, for Berlin and Lisbon respectively. And interestingly, when I stopped by Sound Metaphors to pick up my second weight, the store clerk conceded that they had taken some heat for its design. And it's not hard to see why, as I think it skirts the edges of controversy twice. So if we look at the underside, it tells us that this puck weighs 523 grams. But it also tells us that it wants to make dance floor magic again. Make dance floor magic again. I don't have to spell that out for you, do I? Now, I know this might leave some baby boomers completely bemused, but if you came of age during the 90s UK techno scene, you'll know why the Mitsubishi logo is so iconic. And I'll put a link below for anyone wanting to read up on how that logo ended up on, what should we call them, disco biscuits? And the story is so insane that it reads like an urban myth, and it's definitely not YouTube safe. And I will thank you for exercising some degree of self-control in not mentioning politics or substance abuse in the comment section below. Besides, you can no longer buy one of these pucks, and as we shall see, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, the first two production runs of H.A.N.D Hi-Fi's pucks sold out within hours of going on sale, I think in September and December of last year. And at this stage, there's no sign of a third run. In fact, I think they've moved on to a different design. And their selling out is despite the hefty €99 asking price for each puck. So I put one of them on the SL-1300G that's behind me here in Berlin, and the other on an SL-1210GR, the Mark I version in Portugal, and neither appears to impact the turntable's rotational speed. However, I wouldn't dream of dropping something so heavy onto the middle of the low-mass, belt-driven Rega Planar 8. So like I say, you've got to check in with your local hi-fi dealer or turntable manufacturer to work out whether your turntable is suitable for one of these weights. Anyway, now comes the twist which poked expectation bias in the eye. So having used each of these pucks on two tables in two different hi-fi systems, I can tell you that these pucks, they degrade the sound. And I am talking about flatter microdynamics and a slight blurring of the stereo image. And I only realized this after a few weeks of listening with the puck in place and then removing it again. And on my turntables, records definitely sound better without the H.A.N.D Hi-Fi puck in place. And this is the exact opposite of what I was expecting. Now, to find out why the sound is worse with the H.A.N.D Hi-Fi puck in place, I called on a turntable designing friend. So he is a turntable designer, he is a professional in this field, an expert on this field. He definitely knows way more than I do. And he chuckled actually before explaining that the puck's underside, the material, isn't impedance matched to that of a vinyl record, And he also said that the play in the spindle cutout will transfer unwanted vibrations to the record. Essentially, when you drop this onto a Technics, it moves a little bit. You can feel that it's a bit loose. So yeah, in other words, this sits loose on the Technics SL-1210 and 1300's spindle. And for me, that leaves the H.A.N.D Hi-Fi record puck as a visual curiosity with sort of nudge nudge, wink wink, nostalgic appeal, and nothing more really. However, what I expected and didn't get from the H.A.N.D Hi-Fi puck is exactly what I did get from this next accessory. So at the start of 2020, I interviewed Justin Greenslade of Isonoe about his rotary DJ mixer. And that interview took place at Hard Wax Records here in Berlin and at its old location in Kreuzberg, because it's since moved to the Kraftwerk building in... Is that Kreuzberg or Mitte? I think it might still be Kreuzberg. Anyway, fitted to the underside of each Technics SL-1210 at Hard Wax were a set of Isonoe's isolation feet. So I naturally wanted to try a set, right? But it would take Greenslade almost 2 years to send me a sample, and then it would take me another 2 years, which is laughable really, to fit them to my Technics SL-1210GR. And boy, am I glad I found the Isonoe feet in a drawer in Lisbon, because these feet improve the sound of the 1210GR by sort of nudging the stereo image into better focus. I think focus is the right word, like a camera lens coming into focus. And also the feet make the quieter sounds pop a little bit more, you know, like improved micro dynamic, I call it flicker, but you might have a different word. And I think these feet do this by better insulating the turntable from the vibrations that would otherwise work their way into the table's structure. So the ball bearings in the base of the Isonoe feet means we get reduced contact surface area to the surface below compared to the stock feet. And the Isonoe feet are also more elastic than the stock feet. In fact, the Isonoe feet were originally designed for use in clubs where SPLs or volume levels go much higher than at home. And the improvements at home are, yeah, they're subtle. They are very much not night and day, but I still think they are worth the €200 asking price. And if I were keeping the SL-1300G that's behind me here, can you see it if I lean this way? I look at my monitor. Yeah, if I were keeping that turntable, I'd definitely add a set of Isonoe feet to it, but in the silver finish. In fact, these feet can be fitted to any component with an M6 thread, including tube amps and CD players and that kind of thing. And lastly, I've got to underscore this, they are made in the UK. Lastly, an accessory for those who stream music and don't play vinyl. So this is something called a SenseLabs Quick Keys, and I am now using this device as my remote control for Roon. So this Quick Keys device talks to a wireless dongle that's connected to the really small, I think it's a small board computer. Do you call it a small board computer, SBC, or is it single board computer? Anyway, it's a rock chip based device, and it's made by a company called Roon and We've covered them on this channel before. And that little small board computer sits under my radiator over here. And that hands-off commands that it receives from this to the Roon server. In my case, that's a Grim MU2 that's behind me. And it sends those commands to the Roon server's extensions panel. So On this device, I use the rotary for volume control and then the center button for play pause, and you can see that there are buttons for changing the tracks and changing Roon zones marked in the center of this, this kind of light plastic device. It is a bit plasticky, but it's still quite nice. I think that you can buy one of these for about €100. And there are 8 buttons in the middle here, and their behavior can be customized in Roon's extensions panel. So I'll put a link in the show notes below for more information on this, and I would like to thank Roon for sponsoring this video. Anyway, that's all from me for today. If you like this video, you know what to do. And my Patreon is open to anyone who is more into music than hi-fi gear. I guess a bit like me, really. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching. However, my preferred mount is the screw-on clamp. Now, the Uberlight... However, my preferred mount is the screw-on clamp, onto which the Uberlight frame then drops. However, my preferred mount is the screw-on clamp, and then the Uberlight frame then drops onto the open spindle for 360 degrees. Now the frame is powered via USB-C, so it's a 5-volt feed, and that... Now the frame is powered via... Now the frame is powered via a 5-volt USB-C adapter that illuminates 18 LED. Now the frame is powered by a 5-volt USB-C adapter, and that illuminates 18 LEDs mounted to the underside of the plaques. Goodness me. And the 8